Welcome to the Youth in Mind Talks podcast show. Hi, I'm Olive, and we are Youth in Mind Talks. Youth in Mind is a California-based nonprofit organization founded and steered by youth affected by the mental health system. Youth in Mind members participate in multiple levels of leadership and advocacy, just like creating this podcast. This month, we are excited to introduce a series of 12 podcasts we will be doing this year, which will be released once a month on the topic of mental health.
The growing need for mental health awareness and stigma reduction is an all-time high, especially in light of recent political upheaval. So Youth in Mind is creating this series of 12 episodes and is going to cover several areas of mental health topics, especially pertaining to the issue of stigma. Throughout the show, you may also hear about our mental health journey and what led us to be so passionate about this discussion. Here are some interesting stats and stories from the people within our surrounding communities.
Did you know the National Institute of Mental Health reported 1 in 5 people in the U.S. experience mental health challenges in a given year? So to get a further understanding of people's idea of mental health, we went into our local communities and asked people how they felt about the subject.
My name is Monique Desir. I'm 26 years old. I live in Humboldt County. I think that that's probably a pretty strong statistic, if not more people.
So if so many people are going through this mental health struggle, why do you think we're not addressing that or talking about that more in this country?
Like mental stigmas, and that because you can't necessarily see it or directly see how it affects certain people, at least people think it doesn't exist. I also think social stigma comes in with a lack of knowledge. People that may not have experienced a lot of it and or have the right education around it might think that someone like them couldn't possibly be affected by, say, like a bipolar disease or something else around those lines.
Yeah.
And then I also think the way that kind of like we set up the help you seek also makes people not as willing to come forward. And they're on spectrums. I feel like anything that's on a spectrum can be so hard to pick up on.
True.
That it's really hard for people to even admit to themselves that they're on a low side of the spectrum to then seek help.
Well, basically I'm hearing just that, for one, you can't see it. So if you can't see it, then pretty much have a sweep it under the rug policy in the U.S. It's not there. So it's not a thing. And then lack of information.
I think it's just like a social norm. Weak people have mental illnesses, strong people don't.
Okay.
Or successful people don't suffer from a mental disorder or something along those lines. I think a lot of people get in this gray area of why they can't ask for help because it proves some kind of weakness in our social standings.
People don't want to show a vulnerability, so they
that's
kind of hide it.
And I guess also poverty. It kind of sucks that as we have this conversation, we're realizing the structure behind it, but it's only certain insurance is going to cover certain therapies or rehabilitations for mental health, especially with children. If you don't have the money to send your child to a school to cater to their mental needs, your child's not going to get it. Point blank. If you need therapy, but you don't have the insurance or the money to pay for it, you're never going to get that help. Maybe availability for treatment is another huge factor on why people aren't being treated.
Which pretty much ties into the reason why we're trying to do this series of 12 podcasts, because this next 4 years, with a very difficult candidacy ahead of us, presidency, people are going to have a lot of diverse reactions. So, in order to begin this conversation, and bring light and awareness.
People are finally willing to start to speak on their mental illness, and they're kind of backing it up with the whole I know you can't see it, but I'm not faking it kind of thing. These things are real. So I am appreciative of those things and recognizing them more. So I am seeing these conversations coming up more, which is awesome.
So social media is becoming a positive outlet, just start destigmatizing and begin the conversation.
Yeah, it's almost it's like a diary, but you get to share it with more people.
Wow, it's so interesting to see people in these communities feel like there is a growing need to discuss mental health. That is why we are creating this series of 12 to begin the conversation about mental health and its importance. Thanks for tuning in to Youth in Mind Talks. Tune in next month, where we'll be covering more on the subject of mental health.
You know, it's time. If there's
Yeah.
ever time, the time is now.